Texas football beats the brakes off of Oklahoma as the Longhorns get their Red River revenge. Another wild week in the Big 12 puts Texas in the thick of a championship race, and the NFL season kicks into high gear. All this and more coming up on College Press Box.
Good evening and welcome into College Press Box. I'm your host, Tommy Yarrish, and I'm joined by my fellow Chicagoan, Jason Kinander. We've got a great show for you as always today. After dropping the last 4 Red River rivalry games, Steve Sarkisian and his squad headed to Dallas looking to find revenge on the Sooners. Jason, take us through the highlights.
Thank you, Tommy. Well, at the time of this show, about 7 p.m. on Monday, Oklahoma still has not found the end zone, but they sure tried on Saturday. Let's take it down to the Cotton Bowl to see how things went down on Saturday. Here we begin on Texas's second possession of the game. Quinn Ewers hands it off to Bijan Robinson, who does a little dance and finds his way into the end zone for a touchdown. Texas would hold Oklahoma scoreless for the first quarter, leading to this Quinn Ewers dime to Worthy on their opening drive of the second quarter. 14-0 Texas through 1. Ewers to Keelan Robinson. Take a look at Jordan Whittington, number 4 on the far side of the screen, throwing an unbelievable block, leading number 7 in untouched, 21-0 Texas. Now, if you had a running back throwing an interception on your bingo card for this game, good for you, because I did not. Here's Sooners running back Eric Gray throwing an interception to Jedi Barron, which would set up this Texas drive to end the first half. Quinn Ewers, look at that unbelievable ball placement to the tight end Jatavion Sanders, 28-0. And if you were wondering why Oklahoma's running back was throwing the ball, maybe this is why. Quarterback Davis Bevel down the middle on the last play of the first half, not even close to anyone, picked off by Deshaun Jameson. 28-0 Texas, they would not stop there. Bijan Robinson completely untouched into the end zone. 35-0, they keep pouring it on. Ewers over the middle, it's Sanders, beautiful catch. What chemistry between these two, so much fun to watch. It's 42-0. One more time for good measure, it's Jonathan Brooks, the number 4 running back on the depth chart, dancing into the end zone. 49-0 Texas, the largest shutout loss in program history for Oklahoma, largest margin of victory in this game for Texas. The Longhorns are back on track and 2-1 in conference play.
All right, thank you for that, Jason. The largest margin of victory, as you mentioned, in Red River history was certainly a spectacle for the ages in the Cotton Bowl, and our own Joseph Duffey was there to wrap it all up. Take a look.
The eyes of Texas were upon the Oklahoma Sooners in Dallas. The roars from the Crimson and Burnt Orange faithful symbolized that the Red River game had finally come in 2022. Since last year's matchup, many things have changed though. Lincoln Riley and Cale Williams departed for SoCal, and the hyped Quinn Ewers made his Red River debut in his return from injury. The Red River Showdown has been known for its showcase of offensive firepower. However, the explosive offense could only be categorized with one side this past Saturday. Texas dominated OU in a shutout victory with the return of Quinn Ewers as the sheriff, and subsequently this game prompted media outlets to question what could have been for the Longhorns after such a lopsided contest. Coach Sarkisian, still level-headed, just wanted to make sure that his men could improve, but not just on the surface level.
The outside world looks at wins and losses for growth in your program. We look at it every day. I see these guys every day. I see the win.
The Longhorns control their own destiny and plan on having tunnel vision for the remainder of the season. With several ranked conference opponents left on the schedule, all that is commanded of Texas is to fight.
The Texas Longhorns steamrolled the Oklahoma Sooners 49-0 in the Cotton Bowl, winning the first time against Oklahoma since 2018, or the famous sticker the kicker moment. However, the biggest moment of the game was the return of Quinn Ewers, who is returning for the Longhorns for the first time since getting injured against Alabama earlier this year. Reporting for TSTV in Dallas, I'm Joseph Duffey.
And now I'm lucky to be joined by our Texas football analyst, Justin Goosman. Justin, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here.
Always good to have you. The big storyline of this game was the fact that Texas won a shutout. That's the first time it's happened since the 1900s. You know, Talk about this defense a little bit. How was Texas able to handle the abundance of the Wildcat from that Oklahoma offense?
Well, to keep it a buck with you, Tommy, the Longhorns really didn't have to do anything special to stop this Oklahoma offense. Early in the game, it was easy to tell that Davis Beville really couldn't throw the ball down the field, and Oklahoma had to resort to the Wildcat. After a couple drives of Oklahoma moving the ball down the field but not converting, the Texas defense figured out how to stop the rushing attack. By stacking the box, teeing up on the rushing offense, Texas forced Oklahoma into really difficult third downs where they just didn't have the capacity to convert. Texas won the line of scrimmage and was able to keep their defense rested throughout the game with methodical offensive scoring drives. It was clear that Oklahoma was in panic mode offensively early in the game, going for multiple 4th and shorts and even managing to convert on a fake field goal. But the Texas defense never broke, not once.
The Texas defense certainly needing a little bit of rest coming off that 100-play game against Texas Tech that really drained them, so it was good to get their energy back just a little bit. Now, on the flip side, this Oklahoma team came into this game extremely banged up. A lot of players out for them, big players who made contributing plays, and this weekend turned out to be their second blowout loss in a row. Was the Texas defensive performance a result of those injuries or just a really good game plan?
To be honest, there's absolutely no doubt that injuries played a role in this game. If Dillon Gabriel plays, Oklahoma has a little bit different looking of an offense. But to me, I think this was just a great game plan from top to bottom. The Longhorns adjusted to the Wildcat after a couple drives, and the entire defense was locked in. With only 39 passing yards for the game, Oklahoma was limited in their ability to get the ball to their playmakers in open space. Marvin Mims had 1 reception for -2 yards, showing just how well that Texas was able to key in on the playmakers for Oklahoma. All that being said, injuries were definitely a factor, and Oklahoma knew that from the get-go. Brent Venables did everything he could to try and conceal the fact that Dillon Gabriel wouldn't play, and Texas was able to watch how Davis Beville played last week and essentially prepare for Gabriel in case he played because of how poorly Beville looked against TCU.
Yeah, Beville did look very poor. Just 34 yards, I believe, through the air, and that's not something you need when you're trying to beat a team like Texas and when one of your best wide receivers has 1 catch for -2 yards. That's never going to end well. So Texas now coming off 2 Big 12 blowout wins. They take on Iowa State next week. In terms of building momentum for the rest of the season, what does a shutout victory in a Red River rivalry game mean for Texas?
After last year's collapse in the Red River game, every Texas fan wanted to get a win this weekend. However, I'm not sure anybody expected Texas to hand OU their first shutout since the 90s. Anytime you beat a rival, it's a great win. But to win in this fashion, after the way OU has dominated the series over the last decade, this has the potential to truly turn the program around. The building blocks are there, and Sarkisian finally has a quarterback who can execute his system to perfection. Emmanuel Acho, former Texas Longhorn, tweeted after the win that this is the win Texas longed for, and it could be exactly what helps turn the tide for this program. And I couldn't agree with him more. In the short term, the Horns are healthy heading into the back end of their schedule and still very much in the mix to win the Big 12. In the long term, Texas has a coach that players rally around in Sarkisian, a great 2023 recruiting class headlined by Arch Manning, and a fan base that can justifiably be optimistic about the future. This is a staple win that Texas can use to build momentum not only for the rest of this season, but for many years down the road.
Couldn't put it better, and it all starts with those recruiting classes, and certainly getting a guy like Arch Manning and the traction that he has had in that 2023 and even the 2024 classes certainly is going to help this team long term. Justin, thank you as always for joining us tonight. Back to you at the desk, Jason.
Thank you very much for that, Justin. And when we come back on College Press Box, we will continue to break down this weekend's beatdown. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome back to College Press Box. If you thought we would only talk about Texas beating Oklahoma 49-0 one time on this show, you were very wrong. Let's throw it over to Jason, who has our next guest.
Very wrong indeed, Tommy. To continue to recap the Red River Showdown, we are joined by Jordan Geelhoed. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I would always do this.
So we talked about the 0 side of the 49-0 final score, but let's show some love to Quinn Ewers and the offense, who looked absolutely unstoppable, putting up 49 points on Saturday. How would you rate Quinn Ewers' performance in his first rivalry game?
Yeah, I don't want to bury the lead here, so I'm just going to come out and say it, that Quinn Ewers was a flat-out A+ on Saturday. In his first game back from that nasty-looking clavicle injury he suffered during the Alabama game, I was curious to see how his throwing would be affected, or maybe if the coaching would try and limit him a little bit, but I didn't see any limitations in his game. He was straight up dealing, completing 21 of his 31 passes for 289 yards and 4 touchdowns. Incredible stat line. He did have that one questionable interception in the red zone, but other than that one play, the ball was right where it was supposed to be all the time, on time. He even showed off a little of the subtle mobility he possesses when he had to scramble out of the pocket and convert a key first down with his legs. The offense just looks so much more explosive when Ewers is under center compared to any other quarterback, because he's able to make the reads and the throws that most college quarterbacks aren't able to make, and his poise in the pocket and ability to improvise is light years ahead of most other QBs his age. As a graduate of South Lake Carroll, which is only about 30 miles from the Cotton Bowl, Ewers said it was his dream to play in this game, and he certainly made the most of it.
Made the most of it indeed. What a performance for Quinn Ewers. And now, while he certainly deserves all the praise that he's getting, he wasn't the only one out there making plays on offense. Who else do you think was an unsung hero from this performance?
Yeah, I got to show some love to 2 pass catchers in particular, and those are Jatavian Sanders and Jordan Whittington. Typically, the superstar wideout Xavier Worthy receives all the attention, not just from Texas fans, but from opposing defenses as well. And he had a good game this weekend, but that gravity that Worthy carries really freed up the field for Sanders and Whittington. Sanders may be one of the best tight end talents that Texas has had in recent memory. He looked unguardable, high-pointing balls and steamrolling through smaller defenders as he big-bodied his way into 2 touchdowns. And while Whittington never found the end zone, he was a constant chain mover for the offense. Whenever Texas were in those tough second and third down situations when they needed to convert, Ewers seemed to always look for the sure-handed Whittington, who ended the day with 5 catches for 97 yards, averaging almost 20 yards a catch. Also, I'd like to give a special shout out to the running back room. Bijan Robinson's talent obviously speaks for itself. He had another stellar performance, but the backup runners of Roshan Johnson, Keelan Robinson, and Jonathan Brooks are more than capable of handling touches out of the backfield. Because of them, Bijan can take some much-needed breaks, and the running game doesn't even have to slow down. Every one of those backs averaged over 5 yards a rush, which is pretty incredible, and both Keelan and Brooks scored touchdowns as well. So while it's pretty clear that Ewers, Bijan, and Worthy are the stars of the offense, this team is absolutely stacked with playmakers from top to bottom.
You know, there's this term that's been going around Twitter, running back university, and I think that Texas is starting to live up to it. And now, while it's fun to look back at this game and all the jokes on Twitter, looking forward, Texas has some big matchups coming up in the mirror. How do you expect Texas to perform against the likes of Oklahoma State, Kansas State, TCU, and Kansas, all 4 ranked teams left on their schedule?
Yeah, well, firstly, I wouldn't totally overlook Iowa State next week, as they've kind of had Texas's number the last 3 times they've faced Texas. However, they aren't nearly as daunting of a matchup as the one after them on the schedule, which is Oklahoma State. In a year full of Big 12 surprises, OK State is nothing shocking, as they overpowered Texas Tech this past weekend with their explosive offense led by quarterback Spencer Sanders. If Texas wants to win that game, their defense has to be able to contain those big chunk plays that the Cowboys offense is so good at executing. Thankfully, they'll get a bye after that game, but they have another challenge waiting for them on the other side in Kansas State. Their offense runs through Deuce Vaughn, but he's not unstoppable, as shown this past weekend when Iowa State held him to just 23 rushing yards. If Texas wants to win that, they have to stuff Vaughn in the rushing attack, and the offense has to put up points against their stout defense. And then it doesn't get any easier against TCU, who just beat the formerly undefeated Kansas in one of the weekend's best games. The Max Duggan Quentin Johnson connection is sure to cause some havoc into the Texas secondary, so the Longhorns offense has to be prepared to walk into a shootout, and Ewers has to match Duggan blow for blow. And of course, don't forget those scrappy fighters in Lawrence, the Kansas Jayhawks. We all remember what happened when Texas played them last year, and unfortunately, Kansas has only gotten better since then. They have equally tough matchups in between now and that game, so their team may be bruised and battered enough for Texas to take advantage and finally gain revenge for that harrowing loss that they handed them last November. If Texas can beat those 4 schools, they will establish themselves as the best team in the conference and one of the best in the country.
It would be nice if every game was 49-0, but judging off of what you just told me, it does not seem like it's going to play out that way. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Jordan, let's throw it back to the desk with Tommy.
All right, thank you again for joining us, Jordan. Good insight as always. When we return, the Packers fall in London, the Cowboys' defense looks legit, and more from around the NFL. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back into College Press Box. And while the eyes of Texas might have been on college football over the weekend, the eyes of the nation were on another packed slate of action in the National Football League. Send it over to Tyler Moss to recap the action.
Well, we're through week 5 of the NFL, so reality is setting in for most of these teams, whether they like it or not. Let's take a look at how the game shook out this week. Thursday night, the Broncos and the Colts faced off in the kickers contest, and they headed to overtime 9-9. The Colts predictably kicked a field goal to go up, and the Broncos would fail a 4th and 1 from the 5. Russ looked for the end zone on this play and ended up throwing an incompletion, so the Colts are going to take away this victory. And then, following this, at the top of the morning on Sunday from Tottenham Stadium, the Giants and the Packers played, and the Packers held a lead for most of this game, but the Giants would score 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter to take the lead and win 27-22. The Bills and the Steelers game felt like it was over from the 3rd play of the game, where Gabe Davis had this 98-yard touchdown reception, and it just snowballed from there. The Bills would end up winning 38-3, looking like the steamroller team we've come to expect. The Browns and the Chargers had themselves a back-and-forth game, and Austin Eckler ended up being the difference maker for the Chargers. He averaged over 10 yards a carry, and the Browns would miss a potential game-winning kick at the end of this game, unlike the magic that they pulled off earlier this season. The Chargers take this one 30-28. The Bears and the Vikings was another close one, but the Vikings scored a go-ahead touchdown and 2-point conversion on a 7-minute, 17-play drive at the end of the game. The Bears would fumble on their following possession, and the Vikings move on to 4-1 with a 29-22 victory. The Patriots would shut out the Lions' top-scoring offense in the league with a 29-0 victory, and with third-string quarterback Bailey Zappi starting at QB, a big defensive touchdown like this one certainly helps them out. This is what helped set them up at the beginning of this game, and it made it easier on that offense. The Seahawks and the Saints had a high-scoring game, but how about the Saints' tight end Taysom Hill? He recovered a fumble on special teams. He had 1 pass attempt that was completed for a touchdown and 3 rushing touchdowns, including this 60-yarder as a go-ahead score in the 4th. The Saints would end up winning 39-32. The Jets ran all over the Dolphins with 5 rushing touchdowns in their 40-17 victory. The Dolphins started Teddy Bridgewater as they were without Tagovailoa, but he exited early with a head injury as well. So that's worth following as we prepare for week 6. As here's Braxton Berrios on a reverse, taking it in just to ice the game away in the 4th. The Falcons were down all game, but they put up 15 points in the 4th in their contest against the Bucs, and a sack on 3rd down late in the 4th would have set them up for a potential game-winning drive, but a questionable roughing the passer call would allow the Bucs to ice the game, and the Bucs would win 21-15. The Titans and the Commanders game score was decided after 3 quarters, with the Titans winning 21-17, and Derrick Henry had much of the workload as usual with 2 touchdowns. And the Texans and Jaguars was a game that happened on Sunday. The Texans would win 13-6 in an uneventful day where Dameon Pierce scored the sole touchdown. The Niners would beat the Panthers 37-15, and the big story following this one was that Monday morning, the Panthers would fire head coach Matt Rule. Defensive pass game coordinator Steve Wilks was named the interim head coach at this time. The Cowboys faced the Rams in Los Angeles, and did this Cowboys defense show their talent or what? The boys won 22-10, winning the last 4 without QB Dak Prescott, making it seem like if he can come back and his defense keeps rolling, they'll be going up against this now still undefeated Eagles team who beat the Cardinals 20-17. The Cardinals had a chance on this field goal attempt to tie up the game, but it just goes wide right, so the Eagles stay undefeated. And Sunday night, the Bengals and the Ravens faced off, and the Ravens held on to a home lead for the first time this season, sort of. They went down after the Bengals scored a touchdown after the 2-minute warning, but when Justin Tucker comes out on the field to kick a game-winning field goal, that'll do it for Week 5. Week 6 doesn't feature a lot of big matchups, but 2 big ones do it big. The Chiefs and the Bills is clearly the heavyweight matchup that will get a lot of attention, and knowing the history of the 2 quarterbacks, Mahomes and Allen, it's going to be a game to watch. Lastly, on Sunday night, the Cowboys and the Eagles is the other big matchup as they jostle for the top spot in the once NFC East, NFC Least, now the NFC Beast division. And that'll do it for me in the NFL this week. We'll go back to you at the desk, Jason.
What a fantastic recap, Tyler. Thank you very much for that. When we return, we recap the last week of Texas sports and discuss 2 Longhorns in the NFL. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back into College Press Box. Starting off, former Longhorn Cameron Dicker made his first ever field goal in the NFL on Sunday, leading the Philadelphia Eagles to victory over the Arizona Cardinals.
Justin Tucker was up to his usual tricks on Sunday Night Football as the Texas alum took center stage in his Baltimore Ravens primetime win over the Cincinnati Bengals. After drilling a 58-yard kick earlier in the game, Tucker sent everybody home with his game-winning kick. It's his 19th career game-winning field goal, further cementing himself as the best kicker in the NFL.
The Texas soccer team won their 4th straight match in a row. It was also their 4th straight shutout in a row as they defeated the Kansas Jayhawks 2-0 on Sunday. Fifth-year senior Mackenzie McFarland and sophomore Jilly Shimkin netted goals for Texas, both of them assisted by sophomore Trinity Byers, who now leads the Big 12 in assists with 9.
Texas softball competed in its 3rd game of the fall season this weekend and suffered its first loss. This happened on Sunday when they dropped an extra inning affair to Texas State by the score of 8-7. Bailey Brandon and Courtney Day slugged home runs in the losing affair as the Longhorns will close out the fall season on October 21st against Odessa College.
Let's go ahead and take a look at this week in Longhorn Sports. On Wednesday, volleyball hosts Kansas State at 7 p.m. on Longhorn Network. Then Thursday, soccer looks to make it 5 straight in Morgantown as they face West Virginia. Lastly, football welcomes Iowa State for an 11 a.m. kickoff on ABC this Saturday, and volleyball heads to Waco to play the Baylor Bears at 2 p.m. on Big 12 Now over on ESPN+.
Another loaded week ahead of Longhorn Sports, but this will wrap things up for this week's episode of College Press Box. Make sure to check in to our other shows this week, including College Crossfire, hosted by Tommy Yarrish on Wednesday, and the 1-0 Sports Show on Friday. Thank you to our analysts, everyone in Master Control, our wonderful executive producer Samantha Pearl, and everyone else at TSTV. I'm Jason Kinander, he's Tommy Yarrish. Thank you for joining us, and have a great night.